Communism. The implementation of this political ideology has had its ups and downs. You see, people are just truly convinced that if the government runs every aspect of your life, your wants, your needs, economy, jobs, that the country will prosper as a whole, right? So some people in Russia decided that, hey, we should actually do this. Soviet Union was born. A couple other countries are like, hey, you guys are right. We should do communism too. So once upon a time, the Soviet Union annexed a bunch of countries and they all became satellites of the Soviet Union. Now these countries are like, hey, I don't really like this no more. But the Soviet Union was like, did I ask? And the Soviet Union, the USSR, lived happily ever after. Psych. It fell apart. And in this video, we're going to explore the dissolution of the Soviet Union as I interview key people who contributed to the fall of the Soviet Union. You see, there are many things that led to the dissolution of the Soviet Union. Things like a lack of incentives, mislocation of resources. There's a technological stagnation, corruption, and bureaucracy. There's military spending, dependency on oil and products, and overall just inefficiencies. Yo, chill, you can't look at my screen. Centralized planning is a command economy where the government controls all the jobs and all the resources, basically all the money in a nation, in order to meet its needs. This led to inefficiencies as decisions were made by bureaucrats rather than responding to the market. So you see, this communist thing, well, it wasn't working out. The Soviet Union, it had its up days as well as its down days, relatively a lot more down days than up days. But either way, satellites as well as the Russian country itself started to realize that they really wanted change. They didn't like how the army was everywhere forcing them, telling them what to do. Their tanks were terrorizing the citizens. So eventually a guy named Mikhail Gorbachev grew up and he became president, long story short. And he realized that he needed to reform the USSR. So he created a couple of laws, a couple of reforms for the Soviet Union, and that led to what he thought would be its upgrade was actually its dissolution. So here today, I'm going to be interviewing the amazing President Mikhail Gorbachev.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev, how are you doing today?
I could be better.
Okay. So, like, why could you not be better, though?
The USSR fell apart on me.
So, anyways, when were you born?
March 3rd, 1930.
And so, when did you start, like, your whole political journey?
I became politician in 1985, and I came into power in 1990, March 30th.
Pretty cool. So, like, you know, USSR, you walked in and you kind of did some crazy stuff. You changed the country around, right? And I just want to know, like, go into a little bit of the specifics in terms of, like, what you did.
It was never my intention to collapse USSR, but ever since I introduced perestroika and glasnost, it started collapsing. The socialist state of the USSR fell apart on me, and we started introducing concepts like market economy. What is that? I have never heard in my life market economy. And then it was introduced. Glasnost was made to introduce openness in the USSR, to create some cohesion between America and USSR. But it never worked that way. Reagan did not trust me, that bastard.
So, what else are you gonna be up to, Mr. Mikhail Gorbachev?
I'm very glad you asked. I plan to reinstate communism into our present society. There is no left-wing ideology, only right-wing. Communism is supposed to succeed in Alberta. No left-wing.
Okay, this interview is over. You see, the Soviet Union, yeah, they're going crazy, but they had a formidable enemy. This formidable enemy was, at the time, and still today, the greatest superpower in the world, America. Hell yeah, brother. God bless America, whatever he said. But anyways, there were presidents that came up. Presidents that came, presidents that left, and no one quite had an impact like the Ronald Reagan. I said the Ronald Reagan, President of the United States of America, fighting against the Soviet Union. I am here, folks, to interview the Ronald Reagan. All right, everybody, we're now gonna start this interview. I got the official President Reagan in the house with me. Can you please say hi, Reagan?
Hello, America.
Hello. So basically, we gotta talk about what you was up to with like the Soviets and whatnot, and how you dealt with them. Because as I remember, you were like pretty tough on them, hey?
Yes, sir. As a former president of the United States, we sought out to defeat communism as a choice, not because we needed to, because we wanted to.
And so basically, because you were so tough on communism and whatnot, you basically like, I heard there was like this season of like détente that they were in, where they weren't really like doing anything. Things were like stagnant and whatnot. But like, what did you do exactly to bring, the Cold War out of its season of détente?
Well, as a former president of the United States, what I did was I introduced a new ballistic missile system that kind of propulsed them to like fight us more.
So you escalated the arms race, is what you're trying to say?
Yes, sir. As a former president of the United States, yes, I did.
Okay. And what exactly was that called? What was that thing called?
It was called the SDI, and the purpose was it so that we have something to fight against the communists in case they ever decide to attack, which at the time they weren't deciding to, but just in case.
Right. So SDI, I heard like the inspiration was Star Wars. Can you go a little bit into depth into what it looks like?
It's exactly how it sounds, Star Wars.
So I heard like you had some like machines out in space, right? And what was the purpose of those machines out in space?
Well, the point was to detect nuclear missiles if they were ever ejected from Russia. And from there, we could have some sort of system to defeat, knock them down out from the sky, in case they ever did.
Right.
As a former president of the United States.
Right. And you never actually did it, though, apparently. Right?
No. As a former president of the United States.
Tough. Well, eventually, though, you did communicate some sort of treaty with Mikhail, didn't you?
As the former president of the United States, yes, I did. We started up our INF program, which was the first of many. And then later on, my predecessor started START, and New START later in 2020, around there, and it's going to expire in 2 years.
Wow.
Letting you know.
That's crazy. Now I gotta ask, what's it like being reincarnated as an 18-year-old Asian boy? Currently on my way to the airport right now. It is 7:05 a.m. and I'm on my way. I have a two-way ticket to Afghanistan. And essentially what I'm going to be doing there is I'm going to be interviewing a war veteran that fought in the war. Can't say I'm not nervous, but I will be taking every precaution I have. So, wish me luck, guys. All right. Hello, sir. Ooh, this is nerve-wracking. What's your name?
My name is Abdul Hakim.
Abdul Hakim. All right, nice to meet you. How old are you?
I turned 50 this year.
He's turning 50 this year. All right, so can you give us just a little bit of background information on this war that happened within the Afghanistani region?
We were tired of the communist state. We didn't want no more communists in our country. We wanted our own freedoms to be Muslim, Islam. We want to be Islamic. No more communism. And they were oppressing us. They were starving us. And then all of a sudden, when we're about to collapse, they invaded us and they killed our people.
They killed your people. Who was this again?
Russia, Stalin and his country, they invaded us, him and his men.
So Stalin invaded your country because there was like a sort of like revolution happening, like there was a rejection of communism, according to my understanding, right?
Yes, they were suppressing our right to be Islamic. They said no more Islam, no more religion. And we rejected that. That is our way of being, and they took that away from us.
All right. So I'm guessing you're one of the insurgents that fought in the war?
Yes, I led my own group. Many of them died.
Oh, very sorry to hear that. So it's my understanding that you guys also had a very powerful ally on your side. Can you tell me about them?
We did. We had the Americans, and they are providing us weapons. All these guns to fight Russians. But it wasn't just for that. They did it for their own cause. They wanted us to be their bidder and kill the Soviets for them because they didn't want to do it themselves.
So it was some type of proxy war, you're saying?
Exactly, a proxy war.
Wow. And this was it the CIA that was funding all of this? Is that what's going on?
It was the Nixon administration. They were funding us the whole time.
I see. They're giving you weapons, ammunition. They're giving you everything that you need in order to fight against communism. Is that my understanding?
Exactly. And they didn't want to use their own American troops, so they used us instead.
I see. You're hearing that, folks. There's a whole lot of conspiracies going around in Western society about this, but it seems like you know the deets. You've been inside of it. You fought the war. You survived. And now tell me about the country today.
The country, now the Americans invade us. They invade us after they give us weapons. They tell us that we have too many weapons. What's up with that?
Yeah, the Americans are crazy. But hey, CIA is going to keep funding insurgents, especially to kick out communism and anything to do with it, because they're in a Cold War. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your time. And then, in August 1991, hardline members of the Soviet government attempted a coup against President Mikhail Gorbachev. The events leading up to the coup included economic and political turmoil in the Soviet Union and Gorbachev's reforms that aimed at liberalizing the country. The coup plotters, fearing the loss of power and the dissolution of the Soviet Union, sought to oust Gorbachev and impose martial law. However, their attempt failed due to widespread popular resistance, including mass protests in Moscow and support from key figures within the government and military. Gorbachev was reinstated and the coup collapsed within 3 days. The failure of the coup accelerated the dissolution of the Soviet Union as it emboldened independence movements in the republics and weakened the central government's authority. Finally, the formal dissolution of the Soviet Union occurred on December 26, 1991, when Gorbachev resigned as president and the Soviet flag was lowered from the Kremlin for the last time. The Soviet Union was replaced by the Commonwealth of Independent States, or the CIS, marking the end of a political era and the beginning of a new chapter for the former Soviet republics.